This video is dedicated to my brother Arnold, who unfortunately died a couple days ago in that horrifying Twitter catastrophe in which he got jumped for saying the Rerir of Solnari, Rerir, a literal executioner for a genocide, was a bad person. Moment of silence, please, before we begin.
I'll be leaving soon.
I really don't know what route I want to take with this video, just a general discussion about Rerir, recapping his lore. I don't know, the former sounds more fun, but the latter is more on brand. You know, it's odd. Following the quest, I had a lot of people telling me this was a good patch for me and the, Celestia apologists. Presumably, this is because it further solidified the narrative that khaenriah was in fact not this innocent nation who was crushed by the gods.
Nation without a god?
Later events unfolded just as you remember. It was all destroyed by gods. 500 years ago, the gods descended upon the world and brought desolation to khaenriah. The pride of humankind was uprooted and crushed, like a weed removed from the garden of the gods.
As Dane would have you believe, but rather it's being exposed as an authoritarian, genocidal, evil kingdom that put the very world's safety at risk, which is why they had to go. Folks, this is not a win for Dawit, the Celestia apologist. I take great issue with that phrase, by the way, Celestia apologist, because in truth, I do not lean more towards one faction than another in Teyvat. I have no biases with this regard. So while this most recent patch was a victory for me, that's because it was a victory for the truth, which is what I preach. It's what I've always preached, and it's what I'll always continue to preach. And if me speaking the truth comes across as me being biased towards a certain group, then the truth is, that group must be fantastic. And by that same token, if I come across as spiteful towards another group, then the truth is, they're trash who deserves to die. So that said, you can rest easy knowing I'm gonna call this Rerir story fella about as well as, referees call a Chiefs game, just right down the middle with no funny business going on at all. You guys won't even know which side of the fence I'm on regarding Rerir until we get to the discussion part of this video. So this finally takes us to Rerir and khaenriah. First, let's summarize his bizarre life story, then we'll discuss the emo-looking, monstrous-sounding, bloodthirsty-loving, child-killing, gigantic-handed, lanky fuck-son-bitch himself. Rerir was orphaned at a young age. While the rest of his childhood is unknown, he was seemingly indoctrinated into the kingdom's anti-Crimson Moon program as he was raised to track down and kill all descendants of the Crimson Moon, as orphans like him never had a choice.
You didn't choose this life, any more than I did. Orphans like us don't get a say.
Raised to be an assassin, Rerir would become chief of all the Crimson Moon killers, earning him the title of Rächer of Solnari, Ravager of the Moon. And boy, this nigga was so goddamn good at his job, he even said as much!
No, I don't get tired of it. It's my job. And not only am I lucky to have it, I'm good at it too.
It didn't matter who the fuck you were, how old you was, if the king wanted you dead, Rerir was the man for the job, a true equal rights advocate when it came to killing. 51-year-old, blasted. 23-year-old, blasted. 40-year-old, blasted. 16-year-old, blasted. 13-year-olds, blasted. 11-year-olds, blasted. 6-year-old. Blasted! While keeping up with this line of work, Rerir would find himself a partner in tholindis, and while he'd lie to her about what he actually did for work, the relationship would go so well, he'd wind up proposing to her. Tholindis, who'd been keeping a truth secret from Rerir that she's a descendant of the Crimson Moon, would later learn from another person the truth about Rerir. In a shocking twist of fate that no one could have possibly seen coming, Rerir would later then get assigned to kill Tholindis, and it's here he decides, maybe this genocide's not so good. So he actively stops hunting down members of the Crimson Moon and even releases the ones he's already caught. Later, Rerir would wind up storming the king's palace, and Dane and friends to free a captured Veterfulnir. With the kingdom now in the onset of the cataclysm, Veterfulnir suggests Rerir head back to the Universitas Magistrorum to check on tholindis. Rerir runs over there, but because he broke down her door using a sword, she's under the impression he's here to kill her, so she instead jumps through a moon gate. Rerir then heads back to the palace, grabs a sixth of the abyssal power, the others minus Dane partook in, and then heads through the moon gate himself. And that's pretty much his origin story. Me personally, oh boy, here we go. You know, I struggle to see how anyone could, sympathize with the character. Which part, am I meant to sympathize with? You can spin the narrative that, he didn't understand the severity of what he was doing because he was raised by the system. And it's like, okay, let's run with that logic. I'd argue he fully understood the severity of his actions. That's why he kept having to reassure himself that what he was doing was for the betterments of the kingdom and nothing more.
The Moonlit Dynasty's are a thing of the past. Yet even now, with the sun shining high in the sky, there are those who would call forth a dead moon's ghost. The Dynasty's fate rests with the king and his inner circle. Whatever I do, it won't make much difference. You were right. Fate has never smiled upon nobodies like us. But by the same token, it's unlikely to bear a grudge against us either. My job is to ensure the survival of the Eclipse Dynasty. And the only way to do that is by eliminating any and all potential threats. It's a perfectly legitimate line of work. Every single one of my colleagues can attest to my fairness. And if my friends were aware of the facts, I know they'd back me up too.
And let's not forget, he was lying to tholindis about his work because he knew full well what he was doing was indefensible. This, secrecy proves he was entirely self-aware, I'd argue, and understood what he was doing. So, this should put to rest that, he was brainwashed. And it's like, yeah, sure, maybe he was, but not enough to the point where internally he wasn't questioning his orders, and certainly not to the point where he believed what he was doing was anything other than abhorrent. Yet he still continued to do it, right up until he became personally involved, because he was assigned to kill tholindis, and then he decided, he never once questioned the genocide until it demanded something from him. Then, all of a sudden, he gained a conscience. Folks, that's not morality, that's an extreme sense of selfishness, something he acknowledges.
There are many men of honor and courage in this world, Rerir. But you are not one of them. You're not here for justice, are you? You're here for yourself.
Yes. And I know there are bigger things at stake here. A dynasty, a nation, maybe the entire world. But forgive me, I care first and foremost about myself.
Do not be confused by this wolf in sheep's clothing and his followers of him who would try to absolve this remorseless monster of his crimes. Never forgets, indoctrination explains but does not excuse, and for some reason, the die-hard Rerir fans would have you forget about modern-day Rerir, who is not bound to a king, has the intellect to think, but would rather kill and destroy.
Find them, even if it means turning this place to ashes.
Everything out of vengeance for the moons, out of a selfish desire to save tholindis no matter the cost. Folks, that's not redemption, that's the same monster wearing a new mask. Modern day Rerir isn't some lost soul searching for meaning picked up by the kingdom. He's a man who's learned nothing and calls it conviction. He has freedom and intellect at his disposal, and he still chooses violence. That's not the burden of a broken man. That's the arrogance of one who thinks his pain justifies the ruin of others. So no, don't let anyone sell you the myth of his complexity. Rerir isn't a hero misunderstood by history. He's a villain who finally ran out of excuses. Never forget, a villain with an origin story is still a villain all the same. Rerir is prideful. He holds his wants above that of the world itself. Rerir is envious, yearning for a normal life he's destroyed with his own hands. Rerir is wrathful, turning sorrow into a weapon. Rerir is slothful, refusing to confront his guilt, instead letting apathy take over. Rerir is greedy, searching for fragments of his lost power, no matter the cost. Rerir is gluttonous, feeding endlessly on the power of this world. And finally, most importantly, Rerir is lustful, because this nigga's doing all this shit for some pussy, bro! But now you see it with your own eyes, why Celestia had to go down the path they had to. Not the path they wanted to, but the path they needed to. Look no further than Rerir, a man who clawed at dark power, devoured the innocence of children, and shattered all that was good. Would mercy have saved him? Have saved his nation? No. 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 Only divine judgment could cleanse this corruption. Only the firm hand of the primordial one, the progenitor god hailing from beyond the stars, could purge a nation that dared to breed monsters.